Racism. It's hard to even look at the word. Immediately it brings up pictures of bigotry, mistreatment, even hatred. For some of us, it's a word of the past. For others, it's everyday life. This contrast is not only a problem for people who are on the receiving end of racist acts, it's a problem for everyone. And it's definitely a problem for me. I am privileged. I'm white, cisgendered, and American. Next year I'll have my college degree. And 3 years ago, I would have said that I had no racial prejudice or bias. I grew up in a primarily African-American town, and I have close relationships with many of the people there. I worked alongside them every day, and never once did I think that I was better than them, or that I deserved more than they did, or that they were less intelligent than I was. And I would have said that there was no racist part in my life. I would have said that I didn't see color. Race doesn't matter. When I got to college, I realized that this wasn't quite true. See, despite the fact that I thought racism was dying out in my generation, and despite the fact that my campus had a variety of cultures, races, religions, and ethnicities, I noticed that everybody stuck together. There was the white kids and the black kids, and the Hispanics and the Asians, and no one really intermingled. And then I started to notice the kind of questions that were given to people of color. Like when one kid walked up to a black student and asked them if they were on athletic scholarship. Or when someone walked up to one of my Asian friends and asked what country they came from. It almost started to feel like people didn't believe that the black kids belonged here, unless they were here to play basketball for us, that they weren't smart enough. And it's almost as if the Asians didn't belong at all, foreigners. I started to recognize the way that my skin color and my background preferenced me ahead of other people and made my route easier. I saw that while I was given recognition and respect immediately, they had to fight for it and prove that they were smart and prove that they were worthy of being here. And then I started to talk to the people around me. And I realized that the black girls didn't talk to the white girls because the white girls pretended like they didn't exist. And the more I saw of it, the more I wanted to fight it. So I started to talk to other students, especially students of my race. But they didn't want to talk. And I wondered why. Talking about race and race relations is a tough topic, and there are several reasons that contribute to this struggle. Reason number 1, the idea of colorblindness. Colorblindness was explained by Julie Park from the University of Maryland as the desire to downplay or disregard talking about race. People like to think of racism as a thing of the past. We highlight people like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. We celebrate the civil rights movement, and we even have a black president. Especially because of that, people claim that we are living in a post-racial society. We don't have racism here anymore. Unfortunately, ignoring race and pretending like it doesn't exist doesn't make it cease to exist. And as well-intentioned as people might be, not having the vocabulary to talk constructively about race doesn't leave us without differences. It just leaves us without a vocabulary to talk about them. Reason number 2. Even if someone can get past the idea that people really aren't colorblind and that we start to see differences from birth, the next problem becomes a lack of knowledge. We're on unsteady ground. For those of us that are just starting to figure this out, we don't know what questions to ask, what's going to be helpful or what's going to be harmful. We don't know the who or what or why, and the idealism that we've always had is cracked. As we grapple with these contrasting ideologies, we find it to be crippling, and it's so much easier to brush off a problem than to dig into what we don't know. Reason number 3. Cultural taboos and the culture of political correctness leave many students unable to say anything. John Hartigan Jr., professor of anthropology at UT Austin, claims that we are so concerned about transgressing etiquette that we spend very little time formulating new ways of talking about race. Anytime someone who isn't white brings up his or her race, they're called playing the race card, and we ignore whatever they might have to say. We're told that talking about race is impolite, and in believing this, we have obliterated our ability to confront racial bias. After all, how can you confront something that doesn't exist? Reason number 4. Many people not of color see racism only as a blatant act, kicking someone out of a restaurant, not letting them play on your team. What people don't see as racism are the smaller acts that most people of color have to face on a daily basis. Comments like, "Wow, I don't expect black people to articulate so well," or "Where are you from?" and then get surprised when they hear someplace like Austin, Texas. These little comments start to add up, and it tells people of color that they are not expected to be American. They're not expected to be intelligent. They're expected to be an outsider, no matter how long they've lived in the States. Reason number 5. After battling the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, and all the race-related issues in this country's past, Jonathan Kozol claims that our country has become morally exhausted. We have become callous to the impact that race has on our country. We wish that it would all just go away. But these problems haven't gone away, and they won't. So why discuss something that makes people uncomfortable? First of all, by keeping our mouths shut, we're letting everyone else know that it's okay not to talk. We're letting everyone else know that race is off limits. And regardless of whether or not we agree with everything that is said in the discussion, closing it down is stunting everyone else's growth around us. Unless we start to challenge people's biases, the world will stay the same. Tim Wise's book, White Like Me, has a lot to say about interracial dialogue and recognition. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Link in the description. In his book, he challenges those of us with European heritage to challenge each other. Racism and white supremacy is detrimental to our growth. We don't need to do this to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves. People of color can speak, and they don't need our pity. Our nation needs us to confront our bias. Our lack of understanding for those who are different than us has no place in the global society we are becoming. If we don't confront it, we will not be able to coexist anymore. It's about accountability and about owning up to the institutionalized racism that we've been a part of. Paulo Freire believed that the earlier dialogue begins, the more revolutionary the movement becomes. I believe him. In case anyone is still on the fence about whether or not race issues are still prevalent in America, I'd like to give an example. 2 weeks ago, April 15th, 2013, 2 bombs exploded at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. When the FBI released this photo of the suspects, the internet went wild, trying to identify them. Some people genuinely wanted to help, but others took it to a nastier side. And they were trying to identify them as Muslim or Middle Eastern. People were beaten as a result of their skin color, despite having no relation to the bombings. Social media got even nastier. One New York columnist went as far as to say that all Muslims were evil on his Twitter. "Let's kill them all," he suggested. Facebook and Twitter alike were quick to make racial comments and to find ways to link race to what had happened. The antagonism showed during these few days was horrifying. The fear in the Muslim community showed in tweets from the members over and over with the words, "Please don't be Muslim." Others warned them that no matter what, they would be stigmatized and they would be blamed. This wasn't just about religion. This was about an entire people group. Anyone who appeared to be Middle Eastern would be labeled Muslim, a terrorist, the enemy. This isn't over. If you're on board and you want to start making a change, then begin with resistance and allyship. Tim Wise says that this will alleviate the guilt that comes with the oppression lens and help to build greater communication. Secondly, start to plant seeds of doubt. If you see someone around you making a racist comment, ask them why they believe what they believe. Don't just shut them down. And when you're ready to engage in discussion, Clyde Ford, co-founder of the Northern Puget Sound region of the NAACP, had these tips. 1. Build mutual understanding. When we just try to understand where someone is coming from, we superimpose our realities on theirs. 2. Be open-minded. Accept your views as just one of many possible filters on reality. 3. Bridge differences. Don't insist on ending with similar views. 4. Seek agreement through synthesis. Don't take sides. Find a place in the middle. You don't need to give up your views, and neither do they. 5. Focus on the relationship. Move beyond self and other to your interaction with each other. 6. Learn to hold the parties you communicate with in the highest positive regard. Allow people to be present in the moment, whether that moment holds confusion, resentment, anger, courage, or love. Accept what they are trying to say without trying to change or alter it. I hope this video gives you a place to start talking about race relations with the people around you. It's okay to be nervous, and it's okay to feel awkward. Continue to pursue unity. If you want more resources, check the description. And in the words of our president, race is an issue that I believe that our nation cannot afford to ignore right now. Accept the challenge. Start talking.